Hey all, Tommy Tsunami here, and welcome to the first ever episode of Marathon Man. So this month I decided to watch a bunch of horror movies, and what I did was set out a couple basic rules. What I decided to do was do one movie a day for every single day of October, and it had to be a movie I hadn't seen, and it had to fall in under one basic category of either horror, suspense, thriller, or like a Halloween favorite. To explain that, the easiest would be like Hocus Pocus. I've seen that. That's not in this list or anything, but clearly that's not a horror or suspense thriller, but it definitely falls into the Halloween category. Alright, so October 1st, I watched The Green Room. So, The Green Room was a very good movie. It starred Anton Yelchin, Imogen Poots, Aaliyah Shawkat, Patrick Stewart, and Mark Webber. Those were all the people. I'm just going to list off for most of the movies just the people I recognize. At the very least, if I totally recognize someone from a lot of things, I'll at least look up their names so I can list them. It was very intense. It was creepy. It was definitely a suspense thriller, not so much a horror necessarily. I really liked this movie. It wasn't just a bunch of dumb victims running around. The movie's essentially about a band that gets kind of screwed over on a gig, and they need money, and they're kind of touring around just aimlessly where they can get gig to gig, and they're thinking about heading back, and from the gig that didn't pan out with them, that guy finds another gig for him further away, and they go play it, and kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they accidentally come up on a crime scene, I guess is the best way to put it, and it kind of goes from there. It's very creepy, it's very well done, and I really liked it, so I definitely recommend that one. October 2nd, I watched They're Watching. This was on Netflix. It's a found footage movie. It starts kind of like a weird House Hunters type show, you'd think, and that's just kind of the beginning. It's like a foreign... It takes place in Europe, and quality's fine. I mean, I didn't really have an issue with that. Sometimes found footage movies can be kind of almost strenuous to watch, kind of a pain. But I couldn't get into it completely, and I've seen plenty of found footage films that I kind of do and that I've definitely enjoyed. This one it didn't do it for me at all. They're just going to check out a very remote town, and the townspeople just aren't happy about, I guess, them being there, shooting footage, and it just kind of goes from there. October 3rd. Okay, this one, on October 3rd, I actually watched 3 movies. The first one was Creep. I watched this on Netflix. It had Mark Duplass. He's done a lot of independent movies with, I'm pretty sure, his brother, and very unsettling. His brother didn't have anything to do with this, well, as far as I know. His co-star was Patrick Bryce, and he also co-wrote it with Mark Duplass, and he directed it. It was really well done. It's worth a watch. Basically, this guy takes a job online, like a Craigslist ad. They don't say that, but some kind of ad, and it's to go film a guy, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500, something like that for the day. And it's just a day's work of just shooting, and he has no idea what it's for. It's very vague in the job listing, and he goes there, and this guy essentially tells him he's terminally ill, or he's cancer or something like that, and basically he doesn't have that long to live, and he wants to make a video for his son that's too young to remember or hasn't been born yet. I can't remember. I've watched way too many movies this month, but essentially the guy's just very uncomfortable, and it just gets weirder and weirder from there. One interesting thing when I was looking up the writer and director, there's a Creep 2 and 3 supposedly coming out next year and in 2018 to finish the Creep trilogy is what it says. So I would definitely look forward to that. I will definitely watch them if they come out. Let's see, the second one I watched was the Snowtown murders. This was based on a true story of Australia's worst serial killer. It's highly disturbing, made me feel uncomfortable more than Creep did, which is impressive. It's a good movie, but it is slow. It's not necessarily a horror. It's very dramatic and just uncomfortable and odd. And yeah, it's a true story. So I guess if you're interested in those kinds of things, you could watch it, but it's very, very uncomfortable to watch. So the serial killer essentially he convinces other people to help him carry out his bidding at times too. Very manipulative and stuff like that. The third movie I watched on the 3rd was Cell. I watched this on ATT Uverse On Demand, so you can check your On Demands if you want to check this one out. It's based on the Stephen King book. I actually read this book. Right off the bat, I don't know. I liked kind of the first and second act of this movie, but wasn't a big fan of the third act. That's kind of similar to how I felt towards the book as well. I don't know if I could say if I liked the book or the movie better. Maybe the book better. I mean, they're both different. It stars John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, and this is the second movie they've been in that was adapted from a Stephen King book. They also did 1408, and I thought the casting was good, even on the other characters. It's just towards the end, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it. But basically, people start getting infected with almost like this rage-like symptoms, and they just start almost zombie-like, but not. And it's all coming through cellular phones and stuff like that, which you'd obviously see through the previews. October 4th. This one, I actually didn't mean to plan this, but I watched the 4th Alien movie. I watched Alien Resurrection. This is the only one I hadn't seen, and so I've always wanted to see it, even though plenty of people are like, "Oh, that's the worst one. It's not worth seeing. Don't even watch it." Well, I still want to see it because I'm curious in terms of just the storyline and what they did differently. I enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't my favorite, but it was definitely better than Aliens vs. Predator 2. I mean, I knew it couldn't have been worse than that. So when I put it in, I did notice that there was a 1997 theatrical release and a 2003 special edition, and I wasn't sure which to watch because I knew if I'm going to watch one and I'm watching all these other movies, I probably wouldn't check out the other version for quite a while, if ever. And I looked it up, and the director preferred the theatrical. The special edition isn't a director's cut. It's just got a few extra little things here and there, I guess. So I just went with the theatrical version. I didn't realize Sigourney Weaver was in that. I just thought it was Winona Ryder based on the cover. So that was cool. Ron Perlman's also in it. He's younger, which I hadn't really seen him in anything, I guess, from that time period off the top of my head when this movie was made. So it was worth seeing. I mean, if you like the other ones, just to kind of see where else they can go with the story. I had one issue with the movie. If you see it, you probably know what I mean. But you know, it's not a perfect movie, but it was a fun watch. I'm glad I finally seen it. On October 5th, I watched Conjuring 2. I really liked the first movie, so that's what really made me want to see this one. The first one had a really solid story, and it was still creepy. So on to this one. I watched this one on demand. Director was James Wan. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga were great in it. They were in the first one as well, so it was cool that they actually had them back. It wasn't just a complete different, horror story that they do sometimes that has nothing to do with it. I have to note, I like the original more. I thought it was slightly scarier, the original was, but I'd definitely watch a third one if they did come out with one. And it's supposedly based on the most documented paranormal event ever, the second one is. So I found that pretty interesting. On October 6th, I watched Satanic. Check this one out on demand. It starred Sarah Hyland from Modern Family. It wasn't that scary to me. I think that's what it was going for. Honestly, the first half of the movie was fine. I really didn't have a problem with that. I even enjoyed kind of the premise and where it was going. Second half was not a fan of. I don't know. I think if I was much, much younger, it might have creeped me out, but I don't think it held up for that. Bottom line, I wouldn't watch this again. October 7th, this one I checked out, the Blair Witch. It's not a remake, and it's not technically a sequel. There was some Blair Witch, like Book of Souls or something like that came out at some point. But it's essential. I mean, I guess it's a sequel to the original. It doesn't make any comments towards the second one as far as I know. I did see that at one point. Remember, that was terrible. First one I saw, I think a few years after it came out, the original, and I didn't think it was that creepy. I just thought it was very gimmicky. That's great. It revolutionized the genre. There's plenty of things I do like in found footage, especially horror-wise, but I just didn't like the original that much. This one I saw in the movie theaters. I saw it by myself. I couldn't get anyone to go with me, and I also happened to be the only person in the theater. That probably helped it being creepy. I thought it was far better than the original. Even the story I thought was very good. The director was Adam Wingard. He directed VHS 1 and 2 and You're Next, which is some of the horror movies I've seen by him, and I actually liked a lot of those. October 8th, I watched Holidays. This is an anthology film, which is a bunch of just smaller short stories, all wrapped up in one, 2-hour, hour and a half movie, whatever it was. I'll just go over these really quickly. Actually, I have a side sheet just so I know. Okay, so the first one was Valentine's Day. It was basic. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't say it was necessarily that creepy, but it was enjoyable. Second one was St. Patrick's Day. It was bad. Made me laugh, though. That's all I can really say about that. Third one was Easter. This story was one of the most disturbing creatures so far, and it was pretty creepy. Next one was Mother's Day. There had already been a pregnancy movie or story. The St. Patrick's Day one was already a pregnancy one, I'm pretty sure. And the Mother's Day also did something with pregnancy. I thought maybe if they're gonna, combine these all together, it would have been good to kind of coordinate and not have something. I mean, they're not incredibly similar, but they're similar. I personally would have liked them all hitting completely different topics. Father's Day was the next one. I enjoyed it. It was interesting. The next one was actually directed by Kevin Smith. This might have been my favorite. It had Harley Quinn, his daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, and then it also had Harley. God, I can't remember his last name. He's from Epic Mealtime and does a lot of YouTube. Marvin. I don't know. I should know this. The next one was Christmas. It was really good. I liked this one a lot. It had Seth Green in it and Claire Grant. So that was cool. It had a very cool story with VR and stuff like that. And the last one was New Year's. It was okay. It had Eli Roth's wife in it. She was in, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was in Knock Knock, and she's currently in, what's that show on AMC I even watch? Feed the Beast, pretty sure it's what's it called. Alright, on October 9th, I watched Tales from the Darkside. It had 3 stories and 1 wraparound story, just a little story that is at the beginning and the end, and just kind of segues into all these 3 main stories. The wraparound story, the main kid is actually young Matthew Lawrence, so that was pretty entertaining to see. It's not a incredibly, complicated story or whatever. It's just something to segue into all the other ones, so I thought that was decent. The first story is Lot 249. This is a Arthur Conan Doyle story. He was the writer of all the Sherlock Holmes books, and they adapted this into a short film. It had Christian Slater, Steve Buscemi, and Julianne Moore in it. Those are the people I recognized. It was really entertaining to see them in this, since this was an older movie. And it wasn't my favorite, but it was still good. It was still worth watch. The next one was Cat from Hell. It's a Stephen King short story, and it was adapted by George Romero. It was entertaining. It wasn't bad. It was worth seeing. And then the last one was called Lover's Vow. This one was actually my favorite. It had James Remar, which, if that name doesn't ring a bell, he was Dexter's dad in the TV show Dexter. He was also Raiden in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It was a cool, interesting story with a little bit of, well, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, it was a cool anthology. The three of them and then the one wraparound. Definitely check it out if you are into older, 70s, 80s, 90s horror, not just contemporary stuff. On October 10th, I watched Under the Skin. I watched this on Amazon Instant Video. This was directed by Jonathan Glazer. He's worked on tons of stuff. I mean, if you look him up. Had Scarlett Johansson. There wasn't a lot of dialogue in it, but, that was intentional. It's a very eerie movie. It had my curiosity the entire movie. It definitely made me interested in what was going on, and I didn't want to miss anything. The biggest thing I can say with this movie is if you don't like ambiguity, you're going to not be able to handle this film. It's essentially about a woman or something picking up just random men and taking them back to her place, and it just gets weird from there. It's a very odd movie. So you definitely check it out if you like that kind of stuff, or you like very, hard sci-fi, but also with like a suspense and maybe a minor horror aspect. On October 11th, I watched The Collector. Picked this one up used. It was a cool movie. It was decent. Not necessarily scary for me, but the story engaged me. It was a good what would you do type film, thinking about what you do and watching the main, I was going to say protagonist, but he's almost kind of an antagonist too, in a way. Basically, a burglar is breaking into a house. He's clearly, checked out and gotten some info about all that kind of stuff, worked for. And he gets there, and there's something already happening to there's not supposed to be anyone home at that point in time, and yet the owners are there, and they're already being terrorized by someone or something else. And this burglar finds himself essentially stuck in the house, and there are booby traps, and it just kind of goes from there. It was a fun watch. I'm going to have to check out the second one called The Collection. My friend was actually in the first scene of the second one, but that's the only scene I've actually seen of it. I watched it with her and a few friends, that part, but we didn't actually stay for some reason. Check out the whole thing. Yeah, I'll check that out maybe next year or something. On October 12th, I watched 13 Sins. In hindsight, I should have watched this on the 13th just because of the name. I really liked this one. It had Mark Webber and Rutina Wesley and Ron Perlman in it. It's a good what would you do type of movie as well. This guy essentially gets a phone call and out of nowhere, and he's already in need of money, and someone starts offering him money to do things. And then one of them is, I think, kill a fly, and he'll get money into his bank account. He checks, it happens. And then he, finds out, he's got an opportunity to continue playing the game. He just has to do, I think, obviously 13 steps. And by the end, he could win tons of money. The money increases as it goes. And it's just one of those types of movies. What would you do? What is this guy going to do? I enjoyed it. It was a really fun movie. Wasn't sure what to expect. Pretty sure I saw that one. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Instant Video as well. October 13th, this one I watched The Invitation. This was on Netflix. It was tense. It was good. Main actor was great. This guy's going over to a dinner party of his with his girlfriend of his ex-wife and a group of friends that I think they all haven't really met together in a few years. And you come to find out why they haven't met together as the movie goes on. I'm not going to ruin that or anything. And you find out that his ex-wife has kind of joined some type of, commune group or whatever. He just starts getting kind of suspicious of the group, of the group she's joined and everything, and what the whole night's really planned and entailed. And, is she really just, part of a pyramid scheme or a con, or what, why is this all going on? And he just gets kind of more uncomfortable with the situation as it goes on, and kind of doubts what her intentions are and what the group's intentions are. And a couple of the people from her new group are there. So it's not just his old friends. And it kind of goes from there. It was a good movie. I definitely recommend it. If that sounds good to you, check out the trailer. Definitely recommend that one. October 14th, I checked out the movie Christie. This had Ashley Greene and Haley Bennett in it. It was a fun movie. Not revolutionary story or anything, but it was solid for what it was. A girl's staying over, I can't remember what break it was, Christmas break, I think maybe, or Thanksgiving break, or summer break at in the dorms at the school, and all of a sudden she starts getting terrorized by someone. There's a little more to it in the beginning, but I don't want to ruin anything. I'm all for no spoilers. Check out the preview. It was a fun movie, you know. It was on Netflix. October 15th, I watched The Lazarus Effect. Now this movie had Olivia Wilde, Mark Duplass, Donald Glover, and Evan Peters. It's a pretty decent movie. Not exactly a fan of the third act of the film, but I think the premise had a lot of potential, and they just fell slightly short. But it was still a decent watch, and just for the cast, I had to see it. So I picked it up, used, but I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix as well. October 16th, I watched The Ones Below. This had David Morrissey. He was, for most of you, he was the governor in the Walking Dead television series. Him and the cast were great in this. My biggest issue with it was kind of predictable. I didn't hate it, but I think it kind of dropped the ball. Had a few tense scenes, but for being a thriller, I didn't think it had a lot of thrills. Basically, there's an older couple that is pregnant at the same time as another couple, younger couple moves in below, and the older couple has an issue and essentially an accident and essentially has a miscarriage, and there's a kind of an altercation, a big dispute between the two families vocally, and it kind of goes from there and gets a little weird. But all in all, I think the acting was great personally, but it just wasn't that creepy. Not necessarily something I'd say you have to watch in October or on Halloween, but that was also on Netflix. So October 17th, I watched R.L. Stine's Monsterville, Cabinet of Souls. I clearly watched this for one reason. It was the first part of what I just said, R.L. Stine. You know, just any hope that it would be anything like, you know, reliving my childhood of watching, you know, old Goosebumps or even reading some of those old books. Wanted to include something with, you know, that related to R.L. Stine that I hadn't seen. I liked it. Don't expect it to magically fill that Goosebumps hole if you did watch that as a kid or anything like that. Understand it's like a kids, tweens movie. I didn't recognize any of the actors or anything, but they still did fine for what it was, you know. A hair over the top at times, but I mean that's kind of what you'd expect from, you know, I'm assuming this was, you know, on the Disney Channel or something like that, or Nickelodeon or whatever. It was good enough that I'd give it a shot to any other R.L. Stine movie under the Monsterville series name. I don't really know why it wasn't just called R.L. Stine's Cabinet of Souls, unless they're gonna use these actors again or storyline again or something. I don't know. Or it's just a new, I don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, it was fun all in all. You could watch it, you know, obviously if it's age appropriate for whatever kids you're with. And I checked this one out on Netflix. October 18th, I watched They Look Like People on Netflix. I really liked this one. It was different. I'd never seen the three main actors, but I liked them and their stories. It's very much so a like suspense thriller than a horror, but it was good. This guy is starting to essentially hear things, see things kind of, and he can't figure out what's real and what's fake, and even if this sounds like a played out idea or something like this, I think this was very well executed for what the premise was, and I enjoyed it. I saw it on Netflix, but I'd definitely pick this up, if I ever see it in a bargain bin or, for cheap or whatever like that. I would definitely watch this again. I recommended it. October 19th, I watched The Debate. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I watched The Debate, but that's not what I watched for my movie. I watched Purge Election Year. Huh? You see how I planned that out? You see what I did there? Anyway, that was the third in the series. It somewhat connects to the second one, Purge Anarchy. It starred Elizabeth Mitchell. It also had, I think his name's Frank Grillo, is the actor. He was essentially one of the main characters in the second one. And when looking up just a little info about it, I was interested to see that the writer-director, James DeMonico, actually wrote and directed all three of them. It was a good movie. You don't have to see the first two to see this one. If you just want to jump into this or you're with people that want to see this, you can totally watch it, and then if you like it, go back and watch the others. October 20th, I watched 3 movies. I watched Hush. To start, I really liked this movie. It was a fun slasher movie with an interesting take. Essentially, the main character is deaf, and for whatever reason, there's a serial killer on the loose that attacks a neighbor's house, and then she gets caught up in the mix. It had John Gallagher Jr. He was in Newsroom, and he was the younger gentleman in 10 Cloverfield Lane. It also had Michael Troco. He was Robin's boyfriend at one point in How I Met Your Mother, and he was also in Battlestar Galactica. I'm just explaining some of the actors that you might not know the name as much. Normally I'm just going to, list them off. I did look up the director, Mike Flanagan. Remember that name because he actually did a movie that I also liked that's later in this list. But yeah, it was a good slasher flick. It had some cool takes on a couple different things, and it played the whole having a deaf character in this situation. I think it did it well. It did the story justice. It was a good job. Good job! Second movie I watched was Rocky Horror Picture Show, Let's Do the Timewarp again. Essentially, it's the 2016 remake. I watched that on, the 20th as well. This is the second movie I watched that day. It came out that day, so I just decided to watch it when it aired. It was a fun movie. Again, whenever you watch something that's like a reboot or remake, at least for me, I like to go into it not comparing it at all to the original. Just watch it and see how you feel. I really like the art direction of it. I thought the bright colors and just the outfits and the backgrounds and everything were really well done. It had Laverne Cox, Christina Milian, Victoria Justice, Adam Lambert, and special cameo by Tim Curry, which obviously was in the original. The director was Kenny Ortega, which I thought was interesting. I liked him. He directed Newsies, which I really liked as a kid. And he directed those musical high school movies. Anyway. Last movie I watched on the 20th, I saw Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. And I liked this movie. I really liked it. I'm not going to say everyone's going to like it, but it's apparently based off of a book series. I think there's 3 books out is what I saw. It was directed by Tim Burton. I was really happy to see, at least when I checked a little while back, that the budget was like $110 million and it made over $200 million in the US, which for anyone that hasn't worked in the film industry or doesn't know anything like that, that's more than adequate enough to get a sequel. And since this movie that was based off the first book does have 2 book sequels, I'm assuming they will go ahead and make more. I very much hope so. For being a movie based on a book and a series, it still has a complete story, but at the same time, at the end, it definitely leaves you, at least me, like wanting more. I was very much so like, man, I really want to see the rest of this. It had Ava Green in it and Asa Butterfield. Very cool. More of a Halloween favorite, obviously not a horror or suspense thriller. I just really liked it. There's something that I think Tim Burton just nailed it. October 21st, I watched Ouija Origin of Evil in the theaters. Solid film with a solid story. Sometimes hard to do with a horror film, I think. Just because a lot of them can be a lot lower on digital effects and stuff like that. They tend to be lower budget films. They usually are cheaper to make, and therefore sometimes they're easier for less experienced or less quality people to make them. Not always the case. There's plenty of good ones, but I think that's a bad connotation in the horror film genre. But this movie, I thought, blew it out of the park. I haven't seen the first Ouija movie that came out, I think, a few years ago. But I'll probably check that one out. I don't think this one got good ratings. It wasn't just me that liked it. I mean, there's plenty of people that like this one as well. Not sure the other one did necessarily as well. This was the director Mike Flanagan as well, the same as Hush. Really good movie, really good story. Didn't necessarily recognize any of the actors. Oh, there was one YouTuber, and I did notice Alexis Gzal had a small part in it. She did a good job. She's a pretty funny YouTuber. I've seen a few of her videos. October 22nd, I watched The Final Girls. Now, this is more of a comedy horror than just a straight up horror or anything like that. Comedy slasher. I really enjoyed it. This had I don't know if I can pronounce this one, Taissa Farmiga. It's Vera Farmiga's younger sister. Malin Ackerman, Adam Devine, Thomas Middleditch, Leah Shawkat, Nina Dobrev, and Chloe Bridges are the people, at least that I recognized. It's definitely just reminiscing of 80s slasher movies and stuff like that. It's specifically references to the Friday the 13th story, but it has an interesting twist on it where all these characters, the main character, her mom is the actress in the horror movie, in this fictional horror movie, and they all go to a big reunion show, and they go see the movie, and there's a big fire, and they somehow end up getting transported into the movie. And it goes from there. It's a fun movie. If you like, watching horror-themed movies and stuff like that, you're not necessarily in the mood to see something scary, this was a good watch. I thought it was fun. Very cool to see. On October 23rd, I watched Crimson Peak. This had Tom Hiddleston, Jessica Chastain, Mia Wasikowska, and Charlie Hunnam. It was directed by Guillermo del Toro. This was a cool movie. The main character essentially is swooned away by a mysterious foreign Englishman, and her father has some sort of accident, and she ends up moving back with him to England into a very, very old house, in like a mining house that mines for red clay, essentially, and it kind of goes from there. I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror movie, but it has some suspense thriller parts, and definitely I'd say a Halloween favorite. I thought it was really well done. Visually, it was great. Worth checking out if you like Guillermo del Toro's movies, especially visually. On October 24th, I watched two movies. The first one was Dead Blessing. This one starred a young Sharon Stone, and then it also had Michael Berryman in it. He's been in a few of the Rob Zombie movies and a lot of other horror movies. Most notably for me, he was Pluto in the original Hills Have Eyes. This was directed by Wes Craven. I love Wes Craven's films. This one, not so much. I guess I should say I love a lot of his films, the Scream series and Nightmare on Elm Street and a few of the other things. I've seen most of his stuff, even not, including all of what I just said, but even a lot of his other stuff. So I wanted to find something I hadn't seen just so I could add him in the list. If you love Wes Craven and you have to see everything he does, go for it. For me, this was just kind of dated. I guess I just, with everything, I still think there are movies like, Tales from the Darkside, the movie that, even though they're dated, they can still hold up and still be enjoyable for being a movie, from the older time periods, 70s, 80s, and even early 90s, I guess, for some. But this one, I mean, if someone said they were going to watch it, I'd probably say, have fun, I'm going to pass. Or if I was watching something with them, I would suggest something different. It's just, it's not a terrible film. It's just not my favorite. Basic premise, this woman and husband are living on a piece of land, and the husband mysteriously dies, and they live not too far from a religious community, something similar. I don't know if it's technically an Amish community or just something very similar in terms of, basic style of old school living. Not my favorite. The second movie I watched on the 24th was The Crow. Been meaning to watch this forever. I checked this out on Netflix. Actually, I think I do even have a copy of this on DVD somewhere. This starred Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, and Brandon was accidentally killed during the making of this film. I'm not going to go into all that. There's a lot of quote-unquote shrouded mystery and a lot of misreported rumors and stuff like that. I'm just going to talk about the film. I know this is a cult favorite for some. I have no idea if that whole thing has to do with it or not. But overall, I wasn't feeling it. I like the premise. I like the character. I think Brandon did a good job in it. It's worth a watch. They have some other ones. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the other ones. I guess just the overall style of this was very gothic. And I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head of something like that I did like necessarily, or that I didn't like necessarily. I didn't feel the overall feel of this movie. October 25th, I watched Boo, a Madea Halloween. This movie had Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry a few more times. It was directed and written by Tyler Perry. I think Tyler Perry produced it. It also had Bella Thorne, Tyga, Diamond White. I think some of the other actors from some of the other Madea stuff. It also pulled in some online personalities, I'm sure, to try to generate younger crowds going to it. It had FouseyTube, I don't know what his name is, Lexi Pantera, Liza Koshy, Kian Lawley, J.C. Kalen, and Jimmy Tatro. Okay, I've never seen a Madea movie. I went into it completely open. I was going to give it a fair chance. Overall, I just feel like this movie was kind of all over the place. The only thing I thought was maybe this was going to be kind of like a over-the-top character versus the bad guys versus the monsters versus the paranormal versus the whatever kind of film. Like Evil Dead or Dead Alive or Ernest Scared Stupid, something like that. Right out of the gate, I think this movie was good. I enjoyed it. I think Madea that character had a lot of good witty stuff, and I feel like they kind of just ran out kind of quickly. There was a lot of just bickering and bantering towards the end. I think the movie was about 15 minutes too long, and out of nowhere, it has a after-school special preachy part about, family and stuff like that, where I think this was supposed to be a comedic Halloween movie. That could have been completely omitted, and they could have tightened up the film just a little bit more and made it just not scarier at all, just a little bit funnier, just a little bit more smooth. Would I watch it again? Yeah, maybe. I guess if someone really wanted to. Would I watch a different Madea movie? Yeah, but I'd prefer to see the one that's supposedly the ones that are, the more highly rated ones. I wouldn't just necessarily, based on this, just go out and watch all of them. There's a couple bickering and bantering parts that just went on and on for me that I just felt were just a little too long. But, I mean, overall, it was okay. I'm sure if you like the other Medea movies, then you'll probably really like this one. I just thought it just seems like Tyler Perry just wrote the first half of the film and then got inebriated and tried to write the second half, and it kind of just jumped around like, you know, this is a horror movie, no, this is an after-school special, no, this is a comedy. It just seemed to kind of jump around. And I don't think he really does rated R Medea movies, but I definitely think that could have also made it better, but then it would have gone completely against drawing in the family crowd, the younger crowd, especially the younger crowd with all the online personalities. They want to get as many people into seats as possible. That's my guess. But, yeah. Yeah, that was that. October 26th, I watched Most Likely to Die. It was a decent movie. It was okay. Had a few minor issues with it. Basically, there's a 10-year reunion, and they're all meeting up. A small group are meeting up, I think, a few days before it. And all of a sudden, there's a couple eerie things that happen, and then it looks like someone's murdered, and it goes from there. It's a slasher flick. You know, they all assume it's from someone that they wronged in their past. You know, nothing revolutionary, nothing crazy. Just I guess an okay slasher. It was on Netflix. Wasn't my favorite. Wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. October 27th, I watched The Voices. This was on Amazon Instant Video. This was directed by Marjane Satrapi. If the name is familiar, or even if it's not, she got an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature Film in 2008 for Persepolis, which from what I recall, I saw it when it came out. I did like that movie. It was a good animated film. Back to The Voices. It's a fun movie. If you read the premise and that sounds like a good time, you're probably going to have a good time. It starred Ryan Reynolds, Gemma Arterton, and Anna Kendrick. Basically, Ryan Reynolds' character is schizophrenic or something like that, and he hears voices specifically from his pets. And a big accident happens, and his pets continually almost try to help him, like, you know, fairy on your shoulder, devil, or angel on one shoulder, devil on the other shoulder kind of situation. Kind of. It's comedy. It's a fun movie. It's, you know, along the same lines as, like, you know, The Final Girls or some of the other, you know, comedy horror type movies. I enjoyed the watch. If you like those actors, you watch the trailer, or you read the premise and it sounds good, or even what I said, I'd say check it out. It's a cool movie. On October 28th, I watched two movies. First movie was Misery with James Caan and Kathy Bates. It's directed by Rob Reiner, and it was based off the Stephen King novel. I've seen a clip of this in a class in college, and I've obviously heard the basic idea of the whole movie. It was a really good movie. James Caan and Kathy Bates were incredible in it. I really liked it. I haven't read the book, so I can't say if you read the book you're going to like the movie or anything like that. But it was very good. It was really well done. Very unsettling. Most people know the basic premise. I'd say that was the only downfall, is I think I wish I was somehow, you know, of the age when this came out to see it back then, before, you know, already knowing everything I did, just because obviously that helped me try to, you know, I always try to piece together as much of a movie as I can beforehand, as if it's a puzzle or a mystery, regardless if it's supposed to be done like that, regardless of who done it. But yeah, I mean, just there's references to it all over. So, I mean, even this year, Goldberg's, the TV show, based part of their Halloween episode on it. And then the second movie I watched was Dead Alive. Now, this one was a pain to get a hold of. Oh, by the way, Misery I did watch on Amazon Instant Video. Dead Alive was directed by Peter Jackson before he did all the Lord of the Rings movies. This is a ridiculous, over-the-top movie, and it knows it. So don't go into this looking for a horror, and don't go into this looking for anything like Lord of the Rings or anything like that. For whatever reason, this was, I mean, obviously this was made in Australia where he's from, but for whatever reason, it's very hard to get a hold of. I guess they just haven't printed a lot of them. I managed to track down someone that I know that had a copy of it. I've even been meaning to get a copy of it for a while. Eventually, I almost got one off eBay. As of right now, October 2016, it looked like the DVDs were about $30 to $40, I think I saw, and the Blu-rays were like $80 to $100, just to give you an idea. Couldn't find it obviously anywhere in stores. I mean, I didn't go out and actively look, but I looked on a bunch of different websites to see anywhere. I could only find used copies on, like Amazon and eBay and stuff like that. Just watch the trailer, or if you want to watch a movie that's, I don't really want to say much about it, to be honest. If you like stuff like Evil Dead and movies that are just insane, bloody, but like over the top, ridiculous, and you just want to see what something, Peter Jackson did a long time, ago, then it's a fun movie to watch. This is definitely a movie you could, incorporate if you're over 21, a drinking game or something like that. October 29th, I watched 2 movies. The first movie was 31, directed by Rob Zombie. I'm a sucker for these, like Saw, Purge, 13 Sins, Circle, Would You Rather type movies, all these types of movies where it's like, what would you do? Put yourself in this situation. This is definitely one of those. I enjoyed the ride. Essentially, it's a group of traveling carnies, and they find themselves in this situation where they are told, essentially over intercoms and stuff like that, that they have, I think it's like 12 hours to live. They just have to live the night, and they win, or they get to leave or whatever, and they're locked in some kind of compound. And there's clearly people playing this game with them, like trying to attack them and kill them and stuff like that, and it goes from there. Remember, it's a Rob Zombie movie. If you haven't seen any of his stuff, it is extreme, and it can be bloody and graphic and sadistic at times and all those things. It wasn't my favorite of his. I've seen some of his other stuff, and it wasn't necessarily my least favorite. I still think it was miles better than his Halloween 2 remake. I did not like that one. But all in all, I mean, it was a fun movie. It was decent. Second movie I watched was The Witch. This one, ever since I planned this was definitely one of the ones that definitely came into mind pretty quickly. 2 biggest disclaimers about this is I'm just saying this because I know some people that they can't handle watching movies with British accents. Just letting you know, everyone has British accents in this film, and it's more of a Old English style accent, so it's almost, even for me at times, not specifically watching this one not on the best sound system with directionalized speakers, there were times where I even had a hard time hearing exactly what they said. But yeah, that was my second disclaimer, is basically don't watch this on a very cruddy speaker or very quiet, because if you're not used to hearing that kind of stuff, it might bother you. I mean, I'm someone that watched dozens and dozens of shows, UK shows, like tons of them, and even I had a hard time in a couple spots because I didn't have, I wasn't on a good like surround sound or anything like that. I was using crappy, back of the TV speaker, where I ended up watching this one at that point in time. I like this movie. There's like one or two minor parts I didn't like as much, but it was very unsettling. The end card, which is right here, basically says this is all taken from, fairy tales and stories and stuff like that from that time period and court cases and stuff. If you want to check that out any further, I'm sure there's a lot of information on that, so I thought that was an interesting touch, that's kind of how they derived this idea. It was definitely a scary one. Wasn't the scariest thing I've ever seen, but it was still creepy. October 30th, so yesterday, or today as I'm filming this, for me, I watched Fear Inc. This movie had Abigail Breslin, Lucas Neff, he was the lead in Raising Hope, Patrick Renna, you'd recognize him from Sandlot and Big Green, the redheaded kid. I haven't seen him in a long time, so I recognize him. I think most people would. That's why I had to bring that up. Chris Marquette and Richard Reel, also people you've probably seen in a lot of other movies. Overall, I enjoyed watching this. Lots of horror movie references. Lucas Neff was great as the lead. One very minor issue with it, personally. But basically, you're a Lucas Neff character. They go to a haunted house. They go through it. He didn't think it's creepy at all. He just, keeps talking about how he wants something much scarier. And someone approaches him and says, I overheard what you're saying. You want to really be scared? Here's a card. It says Fear Inc. on one side. The other side, it's got a number. And it goes from there. A couple friends from out of town visit. They all kind of party and stuff like that. It gets brought up. One of them supposedly heard of it. Later that night, the main character gets drunk and kind of makes a phone call. And they say they're busy. Or supposedly that's what they say. And the movie goes from there. Real quick side note, if you are seeing this for Abigail Breslin, I realize I did list that. She's only in like 1 minute of the beginning of the movie, so it's more of just a little cameo thing. Just saying that if there's, for whatever reason, any diehard people that are, I'm going to watch it because of her. I'm just letting you know she's barely in any of it. But yeah, it was a fun ride. So in conclusion, those were the first 30 days. I will be watching the 31st movie today as this is posted, but I'm obviously shooting this the day before and editing it, posting and all that stuff, today for you guys. So if you want to check out what the 31st movie is, check out my Instagram. It's TommyTsunami137. I'll have a link below. I'm not sure what I'm going to watch, so you have to check that out. I might even watch a couple. So going over the rules again, I had to watch one movie every single day, besides obviously today, which I will do, unless something crazy happens to me. I did complete that, so that was a 31 movie minimum. I, in total, watched 36 movies, so I was pretty happy with that. I'm going to go over my 5 favorite, my 5 least favorite, and the 5 scariest. So, my 5 least favorite, my 5 being the 5th worst, number 1 being the worst out of what I've seen. Number 5, The Ones Below. Number 4, Deadly Blessing. Number 3, Boo, A Medea Halloween. Number 2, They're Watching. And the worst movie out of these 36 movies, not including what I watch today on Halloween, is Satanic. Now, I'm going to go with my favorite real quick. 5th being my 5th favorite, 1 being my favorite out of all 36. 5, Ouija, Origin of Evil. 4, Misery. This might have been higher, honestly, if I wasn't so desensitized to just horror and stories and knowing so much about this already. Or maybe if I even read the book, I'd have a deeper feel for it. I don't know. Number 3, They Look Like People. Number 2, Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. I cannot say peculiar when I say all that at the same time. And number 1, Green Room. Kind of interesting. I thought just my favorite one was literally the first one I started with. And then here are my 5 scariest. Honestly, I've even got a stack of a couple movies that I purchased used that I didn't get around to that I might watch tomorrow that are, some of them I avoided because they are on the scarier side. So honestly, I had a hard time with the 5th one. I just felt like I didn't watch enough that were necessarily scary to me. So I put 5, Lazarus Effect. 4, Ouija, Origin of Evil. 3, The Witch. 2, Conjuring 2. And number 1, surprisingly, Blair Witch. Again, I saw this by myself in a theater that was completely empty. Obviously, pitch black surround sound, and I sat in the very middle. So, my paranoia, anyone could have come from any angle. I didn't have a wall against me, behind me, on my sides. And my real closing, don't rely on reviews or tomato percentages or hearsay. Just make up on your own. If you want to see a movie, go see it. If you watch a trailer and it looks good, go see it. I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee anything, but I would imagine for most people, if you look up your top 50 or top 100 movies, if you really took the time and you looked them all up and saw what rating they got on a lot of different sites, there's going to be plenty of them that get a bad rating that you like. There's not a lot, but there's going to be some. I've definitely seen it happen, and there's plenty I've been told, don't go see that movie, and I see it, and I'm like, well, I liked it. I didn't have a problem with it. Oh, yeah, but I thought, even with me, some of these I said, if you really like the trailer and I said something, go otherwise. I'm just telling you my thoughts on them and trying to help you guys if you're checking this, episode out when it aired or on any Halloween or in October, any of the Octobers in the future, and you just want to kind of narrow it down a little bit and just get a basic idea, or you like my opinion or whatever. Alright, that's it. Check out Tommy Tsunami 137 on Instagram if you want to check out what I watched on the 31st, or just look down below if it's been past then. Hope you guys have a good Halloween. Be safe. I'll see you next time. I have no idea what I should say at the end, so that's what I said.